So hello and welcome to the Coping with Other People webinar. Hello to everyone on Zoom and those of you who are watching the live stream on Facebook. I just want to say thank you so much to Nikki Fletcher and Andrew Fletcher and Brandy Little, who are the team that have put together the We Are Worthy Summit, which has been an amazing week. It started last Sunday, it finishes today. And I feel like a bit of a bookend because I did one last Sunday and one today. And yeah, I mean, and also thank you so much to so many of you for sending in your questions for this webinar, both through by email on the Gateway Women online communities and also on Facebook. It's been really amazing and just, I mean, it's extraordinary. I have got the most enormous pile of notes here. It perhaps won't surprise you that I have 20 pages of closely typed comments that have come in from all over the world. That is after taking out the repetitions, okay? It is quite extraordinary. And so that's really given me a sense of kind of where the biggest weight of your current concerns is. And I see many of the same issues coming up again and again and again, which is kind of what I thought when I thought of creating this particular topic, because coping with other people comes up as a topic in the Facebook groups, in the private online communities, in the Reignite weekends that we run, when people contact me in the course, the Gateway Women courses, I mean, in the meetup groups, it's always there. Now, I just wanted to introduce you and let them just say hello briefly, so you're wondering who these other faces are on the call. Debbie and Susan are both Gateway Women who have worked with me and have also trained with me to lead the Gateway Women Reignite weekends. Debbie leads them in the UK and Susan leads them in Canada. She'll be leading her first one in Toronto this September. And Debbie's got, I don't know, second or third or fourth one coming up next month in Bristol in the UK. So just so do you want to say hello? We'll sort of do more detailed stuff later, but just a hello, Debbie.
Oh, hi. It's really glad to be here on this call with you, Jody. It's great. And I'm looking forward to all the comments and see what comes back.
Great, thank you. Susan?
Yeah. Hi, Jody. Hi, Debbie. It's nice to meet you, Debbie.
Nice to meet you.
And, it's the afternoon here, and I'm actually very happy to see you both and be part of this call as well.
Yeah, thank you both very much for making the time to do this. So yeah, I don't think I introduced myself, but hopefully if you're on this webinar, you know who I am. My name's Jody, and I'm the founder of Gateway Women. And Gateway Women is the global friendship and support network for childless not by choice women, childless by circumstance women. The terminology is problematic, but if you're on this call, you've probably self-identified and you know why you're here. So the issue of our sort of chat today is coping with other people. Now, boy, what a big topic. As I just said, the amount of emails and comments that have come in have been phenomenal, which really shows what a hot button issue for this is. So I thought I'd kind of structure my thoughts a little bit around kind of, in a way, degrees of closeness. So I think the first relationship, the primary relationship that gets impacted by unchosen childlessness is actually our relationship with ourselves. And quite often when in my groups and workshops, when I do a session on sort of relationships and things like that, and I'll ask people to list the important relationships in their lives, most people don't list themselves as a relationship, which is interesting because the relationship we have with ourselves colours everything else. And I don't know about you, but for me, not becoming a mother had such a massive impact on my relationship with myself, on my sense of identity as a woman, on my sense of worthiness as a human being. I think all of the kind of the cruel things that people can say about childless women, I said all of them to myself, and way meaner than the meanest person would ever say anything to me. I mean, there's a character which I describe in my work and is in my book, and I call her the inner bitch. And for me, you know, my inner bitch was, well, she was like Godzilla. She was absolutely massive. She was the meanest, nastiest thing you could possibly imagine. And there was nothing was too low for her to have a go at me about. And, you know, Susan and Debbie know very well, because they've done this work with me, that house training our inner bitch is a huge part of our recovery from childlessness. Learning to be as kind and understanding and supportive and empathetic to ourselves as we are to other people. And one of the areas that gets impacted as well, which is also about, you know, this impacts our relationship with others, but also it's at the core of our own sense, is our sense of sexual identity as women. Now, whether we're in a relationship, whether we're not in a relationship, whether we've been through fertility treatments or not, whether we're childless by circumstance, whether we're lesbian, straight, asexual, whatever our sort of sense of sexuality, childlessness is going to have a big impact on it. And that's something we'll talk about a bit later, because, do you know, it never gets mentioned in public. These are conversations that women have with me in private. You know, even on the online communities, even within the closed community, like for example, the Online Bee, which is like a year-long course just for a small group of women, sort of with me, the chances are that if an issue comes up around that, the woman will email me privately. You know, so even amongst other childless women that we feel safe with in a small group, it's likely that the topic of kind of how this is impacting our sexual identity will still feel too taboo to talk about. So that's why I wanted to open it up here, because those of you who know me know that if there's a taboo anywhere in the room, I'm probably going to want to talk about it. So anyway, so that's the first kind of layer, is our sense of our relationship with ourselves. The next kind of layer, like almost like a concentric ring, is how I think of it, are the next group of people who are closest to us. Now that will be our family of origin, you know, and goodness, I've had a lot of kind of comments and emails about how our mothers are perhaps not the most supportive around this issue. You know, lots of problems with mums coming up. No one has written to me about their dad, only about their mum. But I think, you know, this is a really tricky one, you know, because I think it can be really difficult for our biological mothers to empathize with us. And I came to understand perhaps one of the reasons why a few years ago I had an extraordinary experience. I have a girlfriend who is the mother of my eldest godson. And when I was first writing the Gateway Women blog 7 years ago, she was reading it, and she kind of contacted me, and we had lunch. And she said, you know, I've been reading your blogs and, you know, really trying to kind of understand what it's like for you. And I've realized that the only way I can really feel what it's like for you is to imagine my son dying. That's the only way I can kind of contact those feelings. I mean, she is extraordinary. She's an extraordinarily empathetic person, and she was challenged by this. And so she was like, and it kind of was a gift, that conversation, one of many gifts from her. And I realized that to feel our pain, which is what empathy is, to really feel our experience, requires of mothers to imagine the thing that they spend their entire life trying to avoid thinking about. You know, from the moment, you know, you become a parent, and, you know, while you're pregnant as well, the biggest fear is the death of your children. And I think in daily life, parents spend, you know, every time your child is out of sight, there's a part of you that is worrying about that. So you kind of learn, in order to function, you learn to block those feelings. And I think this can be one of the reasons why I mean, my friend is like, she's an empathic athlete, you know, it's like, she's not, most people are not like that. So in a way, we're asking our mothers to imagine their own child, their own daughter standing in front of them, dead, somehow, in order to access those feelings. And I think when I understood that, it gave me some insight into why it is more normal for mums to find it hard to understand than you'd, you know, it's normal. It's not just your mum. And actually, many of them try very, very hard to understand, and somehow, you know, often get it really wrong, and, you know, and end up feeling that they can't get it right with us, that no matter what they say, somehow it's still wrong. And so it becomes very, very difficult. So that's the kind of the mother relationship. Within those kind of very, very close relationships as well, within our family of origin relationships, really problematic relationships with siblings, particularly siblings that have children. Bingos, and at Gateway Women, we define bingos as those things that people say to us that are the kind of the classic things that get said to us. And we call them bingos because on a really bad day, you could get a full house. You know, why don't you just adopt? You've still got time. Have one of my kids. It's, you know, it's not all it's cracked up to be. Oh, you get to kind of sleep in and travel. You know, if you, actually, most of my TED talk is about bingo. So if you want to kind of see more on that. And one of the things that people often say to us, if we have siblings with children, is kind of, oh, but you know, you have your nephews and nieces and things like that. But to be honest, that aunt relationship can be really problematic too, because there can be some really sort of kind of weird undercurrents of power imbalances going on between siblings around access to nephews and nieces. And also there's no protection in law around that relationship. So, you know, if your sibling is married to someone and then that relationship breaks down and then that person takes the kids away, I mean, you have no access to them, or you fall out with your sibling. You know, it's like, it's not, in a way, that relationship is only possible by the permission of our siblings until our nephews and nieces are grown up. So it's not an entirely straightforward thing. And also, a lot of us aren't aunts. A lot of us don't get access to our nephews and nieces, either because of the relationship with our siblings or because it's just too damn painful to kind of be around them. You know, so that's not a straightforward thing as well. Now, so we have our family of origin stuff. In that also, grandchildren. It's come up as a big issue. Either what I call grandchildren worship, which can really, really drive a wedge in between us and the people around us who have grandchildren, either because they're banging on about them all the time, or if we have siblings and our siblings have children, that our own mother may just only be interested in the sibling with children. And this can show up in the way she divides her time and the way your parents divide their time. In that, for example, and you know, this is an example that's in my book, where they will not visit their daughter who lives an hour away, who doesn't have children, but do fly to Australia to see their grandchildren. But when, you know, when the daughter without children asks her parents to come and visit, they're always too busy. She is always expected to visit them. And this kind of reinforces something else which comes up a lot, which is this sense that people don't see us as fully adult because we don't have children. And they don't kind of come to participate in our life. We are always expected to be the guest. And that reinforces the idea that we're not really fully adult because we never get to do the hosting. So, you know, there's another sort of interesting imbalance that comes up. Now, within this, you know, this area of closeness is our partner. And, you know, one of the way that you know, this is if we have a partner, because many of us don't. And many of us perhaps have an ex-partner. And one of the reasons we have an ex-partner is perhaps wrapped up in the childlessness issue, is, you know, how childlessness impacts our sort of partnership and our feelings about, you know, the sexual nature, the intimacy within our partnership, but also the dynamics within our partnership. You know, in a way, one of the other people we have to cope with is our partner. And, you know, maybe the reason we're childless is because our partner chose not to have children with us, maybe not more children, maybe because he or she already has children, which brings stepchildren into the mix. Now, being a stepmother, a childless stepmother, is an extremely tricky job. Because, I mean, I think being a step-parent is a tricky job anyway. Being a childless one has its own challenges. Because also other people will see you as kind of having a family. So, you know, you're kind of fixed, you're sorted, you know, you haven't got any problems anymore. Yet you're not, you have the responsibilities of parenthood, but you don't have the status of a parent. You have, you know, many of the commitments of being a parent, but you don't actually sort of have the real sense of identity at home. It's, you know, it's a really, really challenging one. The way people behave around us as stepmoms is something that's coming up a lot, and the way we feel as stepmothers is coming up a lot. So then moving out to the what, and you know, this, your situation might be different, because for example, friends is the next layer, and for you, friends may be, you know, much closer to you. I think particularly if we are single, our friends can feel, you know, take the place in many ways of some of the sense of a partnership. So, you know, our friends are super important to us. And when our friends have children and we don't, oh my goodness. I would say that probably about 6 pages out of 20 of these notes are issues around our friendship group, around our friends not having any time for us anymore, our friends just not being able to talk about anything else but their kids, our friends not being available to us anymore, our friends never asking us about how we are, our friends having no idea about our grief, our friends either expecting us to be overly involved in the lives of their children or completely kind of cutting us out. You know, the list of the ways that this causes problems of communication within our friendship group is absolutely massive. And I can't see the chat because I'm looking at the camera, but I'm seeing a lot of things rolling in, and I bet a lot of that's going to be about problems with friends. Moving out to another wider area, I've called it colleagues, workplace issues. Now, you might want to look at the talk I did for, the keynote I did for the Not Mum Summit last year, which you'll find on the Gateway Women website under videos, because I did a kind of a keynote about the issue of childlessness within the workplace, because this is a massive issue, and I think it's a societal issue as well that needs to be addressed. There is so much unfairness going on in the workplace, an unfair imbalance of workload between colleagues with children and without children. And actually, I think this is an issue that you know, that many mums in the workplace are also seeing as well, because they see the way that some of their, you know, some of the other mums really use motherhood as a way to manage their workload, and not all, you know, there's no such thing as a childless woman or a mother, you know, we're all people. So, you know, people are doing different things around this. And actually, you know, some men in the workplace are getting pretty ticked off about it as well. They call it the mother card. Oh, she's playing the mother card. She's playing the kid card. Debbie's nodding. So you know exactly what I mean. I work from home, so you know, a lot of those workplace issues I don't have to deal with, but I hear the stories of so many of you and what you're dealing with, and a lot has come in on the questions around that. And then the final kind of layer is wider society, the way people see us. And this is kind of even strangers, the way the assumptions people make about us as childless women is something we have to cope with. And probably the first thing that comes up is what I call the question. And if I say the question, do we know what we're talking about? Yeah. Do you have kids? How many kids have you got? You know, which school do your kids go to? It's this assumption. I mean, because actually when people ask the question, do you have kids? They are assuming that the answer is yes. Because I don't think anyone who doesn't have kids ever asks that question. So, you know, I've never been asked that question by someone who doesn't have children. I mean, sometimes as a childless woman, I'm interested to know if another woman doesn't have children, but I'm going to kind of, you know, I'm going to find that out sideways. I mean, obviously in my work, usually if she comes to me, I get to know that. But in social situations, if someone hasn't mentioned their kids in the first 15 minutes of conversation, it's very, very rare that they've got them, because this has become such a classic social opener. And I think one of the questions I asked in the Facebook groups and things like that was, you know, if there was one thing you could change about how other people treat you, what would it be? And the thing that came up again and again is this asking us if we have children needs to stop. And I agree. I mean, the statistics are huge. Now, I'm 50, I have to think about it, 53. I was born in 1964. For my cohort in the UK, 1 in 5 women over the age of 45 from the 60s doesn't have children. Now, of that data, which I do quote in my book, would suggest that only 10% of those chose not to have children. 10% are childless due to infertility, and 80% are childless due to circumstance. And those circumstances vary really widely and often include all kinds of things to do with physical and mental illness, family situations, finances, economics, and, you know, the biggest one, you know, not having a suitable or willing partner in those crucial years. Now, that's, you know, we are 1 in 5. My generation is 1 in 4. The cohort coming up behind me, us, born in the 1970s, data's not in yet, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if it goes up to 1 in 4. 1 in 3 women in Germany and Japan is without children. In America, it's 1 in 5. In Germany, it's 1 in 3. In Canada, I think it's 1 in 4. You know, we're a very, very big minority, you know, very, very big. And I think that we need to find our voice as a tribe, which is why, you know, I called my TED Talk The Lost Tribe of Childless Women, because I think we are a massive tribe that is hidden in plain sight. And I think that we need to change the social conversation around you know, family life in a way that in my lifetime, the conversation has changed around sexual orientation. I think it's, you know, I mean, when I was growing up and when I was watching TV as a kid in the 70s, it was perfectly acceptable to use a gay character as a figure of fun. And that's what, you know, well, of course it's a figure of fun because they're gay. You know, that is not only illegal right now. I think if we were to see it, and actually if you ever see sort of comedy from the 70s and things like that, most of it now, you just think, oh, wow, that is just so inappropriate. You know, society has changed. We still have a long way to go in our understanding and support and recognition of the LGBTQ community, but things have shifted a lot. And I think things need to shift a lot for us. And one of the ways that the LGBTQ community has created that change is they came together as a tribe, and together they realized they had nothing to be ashamed of. And together they found their voice, and together they claimed their place in the language. They found a language also to describe their situation. And one of the things that can be so difficult is that many of us feel completely alone. So when we're coping with other people and we're being challenged and we're finding that, you know, we're grieving, which is, I mean, the idea that when you're grieving, you know, somehow you also have to stand up for yourself. You also have to educate the other person, and you also have to have an eye on social change. It's just not going to happen. But I think for those of us who have come through it, you know, and who are further along the journey, you know, as I am, as Debbie is, as Susan is, I think for those of us who are coming out the other side, we feel whole enough to kind of stand up for ourselves and stand up for you. And as more and more of us kind of do the work to come through our grief, that's going to happen more and more. That, you know, we're going to start changing the social conversation, and that is going to make coping with other people so much easier. So thank you so much. I'm not quite sure how long that was, but yes, it was not far off what I predicted it was going to be. So what I'd like to do now is I would like to bring first Debbie and then Susan onto the call and let them introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their story and what they're finding challenging in their relationship, in their, you know, in coping with other people, and also what works. How have you changed the way that you cope with other people? Debbie first.
Hi, thanks, Jody.
Hi.
My story, I was married quite young, And can you hear feedback in the
A little bit, but much.
Okay. So that I took a while to get over that. I'd say a good sort of 10 years into my 30s, and that was sort of my all my fertile years gone. I didn't meet anyone until I met my now husband when I was 40. We had the conversation, and he actually has got children of his own, which sort of made the situation a little bit more complex and tricky to sort of navigate, really. His children have also got children, so by meeting him, I became a stepmom and a step granny. So that was quite a challenge for me, really. But yeah, as you mentioned before, I'm sort of at the other end of the grief journey, as you said, and things that used to really bother me at the start of my journey don't bother me as much, and I try and challenge what people are saying and what they actually are saying, what they actually are meaning by what they're saying, and sort of almost force them to rethink it. So it makes them think, oh, actually, yeah, asking the question, have you got children, is such a huge topic that they're not expecting. It's just like a social opener, like, you know, oh, how's the weather with you type thing. It seems to be acceptable, and they don't anticipate the answer that us as childless women maybe will give them. And I want to sort of try and educate them as well to really think about what they're saying before they're actually saying it. I find that's quite important.
How do you answer the question at the moment?
At the moment, it depends how I feel and what's going on. Before, I used to try and really expand on the answer, like, no, I haven't, but I would have loved to, and I met Chris and blah blah blah, and I was in my 40s. But now it's a no. And I could just hold that silence. And then if I'm feeling okay, I might just say, well, have you? Or, you know, or just hold the no, you know, and let them really think about maybe what they've said a bit more.
I've had situations like that, and I know many other women have had this as well, where a no has been so shocking to them. I mean, I've been like at a drinks party, like standing there with a drink in my hand, and someone has literally turned around and walked away.
Yeah.
They just didn't know what to say. They're just gone.
Yeah.
I just walked off, find someone easier to talk to, and I'm just left there.
Oh my God, what do I say?
Oh, went well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So thank you, Debbie. Yeah. And I'm sure there are going to be questions about stepmothering and step-grandmothering as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, no doubt.
Yeah, thank you. Susan, welcome.
Hi, thank you. I think I said to you before, Jody, at some point that I could spend all day talking about how I came to be childless, but you know, there are so many experiences and decisions I look back on. But ultimately, I did start trying late. I met my husband as well when I was about 34, and didn't know, but actually at the age of 42, I was diagnosed as being postmenopausal, and we had some stressful loss of family member during that time, so I thought I was going through stress, but we also tried to adopt following that, and I turned 50 last summer, and I felt like I was coming out of this decade of disappointment, really, where I'd spent a good 10 years trying. And so you talk about the question, and I used to think to myself in my 40s, I remember thinking, I know how to stop a conversation, because as soon as you say no, you know, I have had people look at me and just end the conversation as well.
Oh, you've had it too, Claire.
Yes, I have. Yeah. So when I think about how, you know, Jody, I met you in the summer of 2016, I think, yeah. And I remember distinctly looking at you and wondering how you got yourself to where you are, and not imagining that I could be in the same place or close to. And, you know, I think connecting with other women who are in my shoes, have the same experience, has been what's helped me most. You know, I've got friends from all points of life, and you know, we talked about yes, you know, I never imagined how much people would bond over their children, that would become such an aspect of my adult life. And so there was quite a period, you know, in my 40s, I would say, where there was a lot of feelings of isolation and alone. And so I do really make an effort to connect with women who understand what we're going through, and have made some wonderful friendships. And yeah, and I usually say no now as well. I used to spend a lot of time feeling like I was trying to, my husband has children, and when people would ask me, I'd say no, and I'd see the face fall. So then I'd say, well, my husband has 2 children, yeah. You know, and I'd kick myself afterward thinking, why did I do that? So I feel, you know, I have found my voice more now, and I feel like I have more confidence just to answer with a no. And if the conversation ends, it's far better for me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I mean, you know, as Debbie said, when I asked her, you know, how do you answer the question? You know, she said, well, it depends, you know, and I think that's absolutely the case. And, you know, one of the things, you know, in my work, I kind of teach is that you need a variety of answers for different situations. But interestingly, I've noticed that now that I'm completely at peace with my childlessness, I think, and this is quite shocking even to me still, I think I feel as at peace as if I had chosen it. And I wouldn't have thought it's actually possible to get to that stage. And there's part of me that thinks, yeah, right. But, you know, the fact is that's how I feel today. It may be that in the future, when my friends will start having grandchildren, then there's another layer of processing to be done, you know. But right now, you know, I feel great, and I'm really enjoying the freedoms that come with not being a parent, even though all those years ago when people are saying, hey, but you've got your freedom, to punch them, you know, because I didn't choose this freedom. So it was like, you know, it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a death sentence, kind of living death. So, I mean, now you know, I'm in a new relationship. I've been in a new relationship for, you know, a couple of years, which has meant I've met a lot of new people. You know, I'm living in a new country even. And I've noticed something quite extraordinary, which is that so many fewer people ask me now than they used to. And I do wonder if there's something about being completely at peace with it that just sort of gives off that vibe or something, I don't know. And actually, if people ask me now, mostly I will say no, but in a way that has no kind of energy behind it. You know, there isn't a kind of no or a no. It's just a kind of statement of fact. And then I'll move on very quickly, because I might, you know, like Debbie said, I realize they've stepped on a social landmine. They may not have, they're not going to have the skills to reverse out that situation usually. You know, it might be the first time it's happened. So I might just say something like, you know, I'm guessing you do. How many, you know, how old are yours? Or, you know, I'll be generous, mostly. Sometimes people deserve to suffer. You know, there are, you know, sometimes there are some quite unpleasant, you know, interactions, and I may well just leave them to suffer for a moment and not rescue them. I don't feel guilty about that anymore.
No, I do have to say, I recently had to go to a new hairdresser, and of course that's a question that comes up, and like Debbie said, depending on the situation, when I said no, I did say I tried and it didn't work, you know, because I figured she and I built a rapport, and I just felt comfortable and told her a bit more. So, and that's something I would not have done 8 years ago. I couldn't have gotten through that conversation. So,
yeah, I mean, something I've said sometimes, if someone is, you know, I say, you know, no, and someone starts asking why, they go into that extraordinary thing that, you know, suddenly, and I might sort of say, actually, I just want you to know this is actually a much more personal question than perhaps you realize. And I'm absolutely fine with it now. If you'd asked me this question several years ago, it would have been traumatic for me. I probably would have had to leave at the earliest thing. I probably would have been in my car 10 minutes later in tears. And this is why. And I actually take it as a teaching moment, if it's appropriate and if I think this person is open to it. Because a lot of people do want to understand and do want to be more sensitive. They actually don't have enough information. It's like, people say to me, how can people be so, you know, thoughtless and things like that? Well, the thing is that because of shame, we keep quiet. Because of keeping quiet, people don't know our experience. Because people don't know our experience, they make assumptions and they hurt our feelings. But in a way, we are part of that shaming loop. You know, we're shamed into silence, so people don't know anything about us. Therefore, they make assumptions. In a way, as we come out of that shame, as we come out of grief, the more of us who can actually flesh out our stories and just sort of stand in our truth and go, yeah, I'm childless, you know, and some days that really sucks, and this is why. And but the thing is like, but I'm in a great place now. It's like once you're in a much better place with it, people are prepared to listen, because we are such a grief-phobic society. People are terrified of loss. And if they sense that we're still struggling with it, they're going to look for someone easier to talk to. You know, it's shocking, but that's that. You know, we're really rubbish at handling other people's pain. So I'm going to ask Nikki, because I can see the chat screen is going bazonkers. So Nikki, do we have the questions? They seem to fall into any of the categories, like self, sibling, partners.
Oh, crikey. Where to start?
I know, it's going mad, isn't it? Yeah.
It has been going mad. Loads and loads of people responding to the do you have children question, quite understandably. People talking about how insensitive it is, agreeing that perhaps having some sort of alternatives is a good idea. You know, I came up with the fact that now one of the first things I ask when I meet somebody is either what's your favourite book, or a favourite of mine is if you could choose 10 historic people to have a dinner party with, who would that be? And that gets such a lot of conversation going, but actually there's no chance for the do you have children question. Well, I sort of tend to try and get that one in early, because it just stops it. Which is good. What else? There have been so many things going on. Lots of people saying how great this is, inspirational it is to be talking this way. Earlier on, the idea that we do need to put us at the centre of our relationship circle, because we have to have a good relationship with ourselves, and then sort of expanding outwards. Loads of people commented about that. What else have we got? The grandchildren. And the fact that people become so grandchild phobic as well. As soon as grandchildren are on the horizon, that's basically all they can talk about, and can't really talk about anything else. That awkward sitting at the hairdresser's moment when you can't escape. And also people saying about the fact that, yes, you know, as people become a bit stronger about the situation, being able to turn it into a more of an educational moment, if it's appropriate.
If it's appropriate. Not every moment is a teaching moment.
Definitely not. Yeah. Definitely not.
And I can't be asked sometimes. You know? I'll just think, is this really worth it? Is this person really going to take it on? Do I have the energy?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, not always.
No. Could you get the sense sometimes that it's not for the fact that the person won't listen, it's the fact that they actually don't want to listen at all, because they are so set in their preconceived notions.
Well, they were looking for an easy conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have kids?
Yeah.
They were not up for kind of, you know, childless 101. So, you know, at that moment, some people are going to be really curious and really open, and some people aren't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's about sort of learning to judge it and kind of not taking it personally at that moment. And once again, as we're slightly further through our grief, it gets a lot easier to do that.
Most definitely, and also you mentioned about the fact that as more of us get to that stage and more of us speak out, then collectively we're going to have a more powerful community. I can't remember the word I use. Collective voice, which is going to help with the raising of awareness. It's going to help with the changing of attitudes, and it may not be helping us immediately, but it's going to be helping the men and the women who are going to be coming up behind us, because that's a big
thing for me, is that, you know, these millennials, the lovely young people that seem to be either, you know, hailed as going to be the saviors of the human race or our downfall, you know, they would have been my children. And one of the things I really want, you know, one of my missions with Gateway Women is that I really want the next generation, those young women who, you know, could have been my daughter, I want them to have a much softer landing into the experience of childlessness. I think for the millennial generation, many more of them are going to be choosing to be childless as well, you know, to be child-free. And then there will be many who arrive at it not by choice or by circumstance. And I think, you know, I want to make it easier for them to inhabit that identity as women in the way that I hope it's much easier for young lesbian women to kind of come out now than it. Yeah,
that's right.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've got my glasses on.
That actually leads me on to one of my big bugbears comments, which I'm finding that because I've identified it as something that I really get annoyed about, I'm seeing it more and more, is this idea that because we don't have children, we have less of a vested interest in the future of our planet, in the future of the human race.
Did you see the steam coming
Yes, I know. I was about to swear. It's a case of total and utter.
Well, I think I'd like to turn that on its head, actually, and I mentioned that in my TED talk, because I think that because I'm not overly invested in my biological offspring, I don't have that kind of me and mine mentality. Actually, my care and my concern for future generations is actually purely altruistic and is not driven by any kind of biological determinism, and actually is totally from my heart. And with the feeling, you know, having experienced the devastation of grief and seen also through myself the transformation of my identity coming through that grief into someone so much more empathic and actually a lot more courageous, you know, and having supported so many other women through that journey as well, I think that this enormous tribe of childless women that is alive at this time, I think we have an incredible role to play in supporting our cultures and societies through this transition, because we understand grief and loss. And we are going to experience grief and loss on the most massive scale in the next 50 years. And those of us who are grief warriors, you know, with mothers' hearts, but not involved in bringing up children, I believe that we have a huge part to play.
Yeah, most definitely. And in the, as you say, the very, can't get my teeth around it, I imagine, altruistic sense of it as well. It's much bigger because we are thinking about the human race rather than my little me or my little him, who is, you know, it's parents tend to be just thinking about how it's going to impact their offspring as well. Yeah, most definitely.
I've just seen that Shannon Norberg, hello, in the chat. Shannon, introduce you to Susan, so your fellow Canadian.
Right.
And I'm very happy to see that Grief Warriors with Mothers' Hearts has touched so many of you. So
I'm going to turn myself off. I am still here in the background trying to monitor the chat, but you lot are so chatty. It's wonderful. I can't deal with everybody.
Yes. Well, yeah, the tribe that at Gateway Women and the tribe that you've brought together, Nikki. Yeah, we are, and this is such, it's such a big issue, dealing with other people. I'm going to bring Debbie back onto the call. Debbie, hang on, there you are. You're live. So what do you make of that? The sense of our legacy, the things we've been talking about.
No, I think that's really important, and like you say, like you've coined the phrase, involuntary pioneers. We were the ones. You were the one that had to battle through the path to find, your way. There was nothing out there for you when you sort of started Gateway, and thankfully you did start it, because without you and without Gateway, I don't know where I'd be. I can honestly say it saved my life, and to be part of it forward and being there and setting up the building blocks for future generations is really important, because it isn't a given. We all know that. It's something that hopefully, well, I don't want anyone I know to face the pain that and grief I've gone through, but I think they will, for various reasons, but to be able to have a path to sort of follow and to know that you're not the only one and you've got support there is really important. Like Nikki was saying about, a lot of parents are just very focused on their mini-me's, and they don't really care about the wider picture. They just want their mini-me's to have the latest everything, spend all the money in the consumerism and everything. It's quite obscene sometimes, really, when you see that going on, and no one's really looking at the bigger picture. And yeah, you're right. I think it's.
I mean, something that a few people have said to me, through this chat and through the emails that come in and in many conversations, is also that I've heard from women who do have children, is that they struggle with their friends who don't have children, that they are often, looking for guidance. I get emails from mothers all the time. I got quite a few emails from mothers in preparation for this, saying, will you talk a little bit about what it's like, with childless friends? And I think, they struggle to know how best to manage the friendships with us too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, because they're sort of feeling they're standing on eggshells. They don't quite know what they should be saying. They should be saying it, because, like you said, everyone's grief phobic and absolutely petrified.
I think something that came up as a topic was being invisible. I kind of gave it that category, and I think something a lot of people have asked for, in terms of, so if someone who is, a friend to a childless person who's watching this, I think the sense is we would like people to ask us about our childlessness.
Yeah, absolutely.
We would like us to ask us how we're doing.
Yeah, in a genuine way, not in a, oh, how are you? Like a pity.
Oh, lovely, yeah. Pity. A lot of people have said we don't want pity, sort of empathy. Empathy's ugly.
Yeah, and at best sympathy, no pity, but empathy would be the gold star. That's what we really want. Empathy.
Yeah. Well, and if you can't make it as far as empathy would be good. But
yeah,
just
absolutely.
Just turn left at pity. Just avoid it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. So, okay, who's ringing? I don't know.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to move over to Susan. So what do you make of the conversations we've been having around legacy and around coping with these things?
Yeah, I kind of feel I'm at a place now where, I feel like I lost myself in my 40s. So I'm in a place where I have a lot of my friends who are parents, and their children are actually now going to university. And so I think you and I spoke last autumn about the experience where I feel like I've gone through, I'm watching them now have to figure out how they are going to live life without their children. And I don't say welcome to my world, but I think we
don't say it out loud.
No, I know, no. But it is. I know for me, I mean, I'm trying to look at where I'm living, and I've made a couple moves based on the thought I'd have children. So now I'm at a point of where do I go next in life? But in a good way. And as far as legacy goes, I think I feel like I lost myself in my 40s while I went through all of this. I feel like I've surfaced. I want to get back to feel like that strong person I felt like, and yet I know that person doesn't exist anymore. But I know I have great empathy. I want to feel creative again. I have good relationships with my nephews and my niece that I hope to see continue. But I also know that they could move away. And so I actually work from a home office. So I'm all about connecting with people. And I have found that in Canada, I Googled and came across Gateway. Recently, when we talk about doing the workshops, I've looked again to see what exists, and there doesn't seem to be much in terms of support in terms of a type of workshop. So I want to help women connect with each other here.
It makes such a difference. I mean, one of the, I think the way that, childlessness just blew apart my friendship group was something I absolutely didn't see coming. And I thought that it was just me. I thought that maybe I was just a really bad friend. Maybe I'd become incredibly unpopular. I was completely, puzzled. And something, I think when I was at the lowest point of my grief, and I really was accepting that I wasn't going to be a mum. I think a lot of the energy that I've been putting into friendships for the previous decade with friends who had children, I think it's because I'd sort of been presuming that my kids and their kids were going to be friends, but I was just really late joining the party. And I think when I knew, no, I'm never going to get an invitation to this particular party, and I stopped putting energy into those relationships, I really remember making a conscious decision, like, I'm just going to see what happens, and it won't surprise anyone on this call. It was like tumbleweed. It was like silence. I didn't hear from anyone. I mean, quite a few women have talked to me about the fact that they drop off everyone's Christmas card list. It's like you become invisible. And it took me time to realize that it wasn't malicious, and actually their lives had just become so busy and so wrapped up in their families. And as the years rolled on, they had more and more connections with other parents. And I think they had this fantasy that I had this amazing single and childless life, because I was single at that point, that I was kind of doing all the things we used to do together, when we were in our kind of 20s. But they never sort of stopped to kind of think, well, so who is Jody doing all that with? It's not like I had some kind of, spare backup friendship group that I could kind of, grow from seed in the airing cupboard. It's like, everyone had become mums, and it was devastating. I was at the lowest point of my grief, and I felt, apart from, a couple of friends who really worked through that with me, I have to say, one of them a mother now, one of them a mother then. A lot of them, it's not that we fell out, it's just that term rather like, dating. We kind of ghosted. We just sort of drifted apart.
And yet, I since I met you, I've made some lovely friendships with the women from the workshop. And I went to your workshop in Pasadena. The women I met all live in the United States, and 3 of them came last spring here for a weekend, and I met one of them last year in California. We're going to meet again. I just feel like they've been friends for years. And so, that's part of my going forward too, is feeling connected with women again, which for a long time I wasn't part of the conversation, and thanks to you, I've been able to make some of those connections, and that's going to be very critical to me going forward.
Fantastic. Something I've found is that and I've seen it with many other women as well. And this particularly comes out of the Reignite weekends, when you make really, really deep connections with another group of women, is that when we have more other childless women in our friendship group again, it takes the heat off some of the other friendships and family relationships in our life, because it's like when we have our belonging tank is getting topped up, we have women we can talk to who completely get it. That means we don't necessarily need all of our family and all of our friends to get it to the same degree. So we can kind of recognize, okay, this person over here, I really value this friendship. They can't really get it. They can't really go there. That doesn't mean they're not a great friend. But when we're getting those needs met elsewhere, it becomes a lot easier. And and also, the kind of women who come through childlessness and do this work, I am blessed to have so many of you in my life. We are an extraordinary bunch, because, we have, in a way, we've survived our worst nightmare, and then on top of that, we've survived our own bullshit, about how that makes us, a failure as a human being. We've come right through that. And it does sort of slightly spoil me for what normal people. So I'm kind of expecting really deep and meaningful and kind of funny and honest conversations, sort of as a kind of standard, and then I'll go to some social thing and it's like, okay, I need to manage my expectations way down.
And also, can I add to that, because as well, through the grief, I feel like a completely different person, and I'm sure I sort of come across like that with my friends, but they sometimes find that quite different. We're totally different. The grief has changed me, and my journey's changed me, and they sometimes can't really relate to that either. They want the old Debbie back, the one, how I used to be in my 30s, but she's not here anymore. I'm me now.
Grief is a form of love. Grief is a form of love. And just as when we fall in love, it changes us, whether that relationship works out or not. We can never go back to the person we were before we fell in love.
Absolutely not.
We can never go back to who we were before this grieving process. Grief is a process of identity transformation.
Absolutely.
It's so misunderstood.
So true.
Well, we are at 1 minute before close.
Wow.
So
Where did that happen?
super fast. And thank you. I wish I'd been able to read the chat screen as well, because since I've had my glasses on for the last 10 minutes, I've been able to see so much great stuff happening. By all means, do continue this conversation. In Gateway Women has a private online community where you're welcome to come and chat. And also We Are Worthy has a page where they're live streaming this, so and you can chat there as well. So I'd like to say thank you so much to my panelists, Debbie Norman from the UK and Susan Fancy from Toronto in Canada. They've both trained with me to lead the Reignite weekends, so if you have the privilege and the chance to go to one with them, I really recommend it. And thank you to Nikki and Andrew Fletcher and Brandy Little at the We Are Worthy Summit, and thank you to our sponsors. And with that, I'm going to say thank you to everyone for joining the call. We've had 64 participants, and I'll hand you back to Nikki.